Thanks very much. So I'm Kathy Hinde, and I describe myself as an audiovisual artist. And my work often combines nature and technology, and I'm going to show you some examples of my work. But I'm going to frame it with this idea of an open score. So in music, an open score is a piece of music that doesn't have a fixed outcome. It can have a multitude of different outcomes. There are many composers working with open scores, and I've just put on this slide here some composers that were at the very beginning of working in this way in the 1960s. So to give you an example, quite a famous piece by Terry Riley called In C. This is one page of 53 small musical phrases that are all quite simple and all in the key of C. And this is for a group of any amount of musicians playing any instrument. So in that way, it's very open and flexible. So each musician starts with number 1 and repeats it. And then they move to number 2 when they feel like it, and then number 3, and so on, until they all get to the end. And what happens in this process is that people are always on different fragments of music and starting at different points. So from very, very simple music notation and this kind of spontaneous decision-making process of the performers, you get a really interesting, complex piece of music emerging that's different every time. So another example of an open score that's kind of the other end of the spectrum would be Lamont Young score that simply draw a straight line and follow it. Now that doesn't have any sound-making instructions in it. It's an idea, it's a way of thinking. So you're still, in a music-making context, you would use that sentence to guide how you would make music. And in that sense, it's a guideline for quite free improvisation, but it still has an idea that all the musicians have got in their head together. And the graphics you can see on the slide are by Cornelius Cardew, and they're part of his graphic score called Treatise. And again, this is quite abstract, and it's a stimulus for improvisation, but there's still some kind of score to focus on that everyone's kind of got together to share. And Cornelius Cardew was instrumental in setting up the Scratch Orchestra in London in the late 60s, early 70s. And the Scratch Orchestra, a group of musicians who worked primarily with open scores, and also these ideas of text-based instructions that might describe a behavior, not necessarily notating any music or sound. So moving on from that, in 1996, I took part in a summer school organized by COMA, which is Contemporary Music for All. And I took a one-week workshop with a composer called Dave Smith in free improvisation. It's kind of free group improvisation, I should stress that. And so for these improvisation sessions, which lasted maybe 40 minutes at a time, he gave us these 3 instructions. Listen and act accordingly, don't waste sounds, and develop social responsibility. So, okay, number 2 mentions sounds, but there's no instruction of what kind of sounds we're going to make or what key we're going to play or any kind of things like that. It's about a way of thinking and a way of interacting together that we've sort of agreed on in advance. And in these workshops, I arrived as a pianist, but as the week went on, I kind of played the piano less and less and started experimenting with sounds of objects in the room, playing other people's instruments, and it really opened up quite a new way of working for me, and it was incredibly immersive. And the kind of connection between us as a group and the communication was really intense. And I think we came up with some really, really interesting improvisations. Another instruction Dave gave us was play actively for no more than 70% of the time, but listen all the time. So it became about a kind of deep listening as well. And this had quite an effect on me, how these 3 instructions could kind of shape how we worked together. And so I'm just going to put this up now, which is the guidelines for a computer algorithm made by Craig Reynolds in 1986 called Boyd's. And it's how to create artificial flocks of birds, animations. So he analyzed the movement of birds and kind of filtered it down, homed it down to these 3 instructions so that he could try and create an artificial flock. So steer and move toward the average position of local flock mates, steer towards the average heading and speed of local flock mates, and steer to avoid flock mates and all other objects. So the first 2 kind of provide some sort of alignment and cohesion. The last one prevents collisions. Really simple, 3 very simple instructions. And this is a video of birds flocking. It's not artificial, it's actually birds flocking, but you can imagine those 3 rules applying, and you get this incredibly beautiful, amazing behavior that's really, really mesmerizing from these 3 simple instructions, as analyzed by Craig Reynolds. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about my own work. It kind of connects to that last clip, because a lot of my own work is really inspired by nature and the behavior of nature. It uses technology, and quite often, these pieces I'm going to show you use this idea of an open score. So this piece is called Piano Migrations, and it's actually downstairs in the vestibule if you want to take a look. But I've just got a video of some close-ups to show you. So I hope you can kind of get the idea. Basically, the birds are playing the piano. And this is an open score in the sense that I've decided, I've made a video of birds landing on telegraph lines, and I thought, well, this looks really like a musical score, so I kind of wanted to somehow use it as a musical score. And I also had an old broken piano, so I put these two things together. The piano's stripped down and hung up, and there's a matrix of little devices, tappers and motors, onto the piano strings. And the video is being analyzed live by a computer program made by Matthew Olden. And so wherever a bird moves, it triggers a device closest to it. And so it gives the impression the birds are playing the piano. And what's nice about this, for me, making this, is that I kind of decided on all the conditions, like to use a piano, to use videos of birds, to use these devices, and to translate their movement. But then when I play the video of the birds, they make the music. The rhythms and the actual notes they play, I don't have any control over. So it's kind of nice for me to then enjoy this piece of music that emerges from this open score, from this system. So I'm kind of having a duet with the birds. I'm going to move on to another piece which is kind of connected. And this is an online sound map called Twitcher, without an E. And it's made with a web programmer called Ed Holroyd. So Twitcher is a sound map for birdsong recordings, and they're kind of geolocated on the map. So when we first launched the website, there were no recordings on it, because this is an open score in the sense that it invites people to take part, to record birdsong, and to upload it to our map. And it's an open score in another way, because the map itself you can play with. So I'll just show you a little demonstration. You can zoom into the map, move around, and press play. And then as the bar goes across, it starts to trigger the samples. So you start to get this score of soundscapes. And it uses other things that we're all quite familiar with, like tag clouds. So you can select certain tags, and that makes those uploads active and the other ones inactive. You can filter by date, by user, and you can customize a lot of the playback settings. So in this sense, we're trying to harness some of the things we're familiar with in terms of blogs and social networking to create a playful online sound map. But the other kind of aspect of this piece is, it's a bitten. The kind of nice thing about this sound map is that I use it as a kind of excuse to go on bird watching and listening and recording walks. Because I'm really interested in the idea that this combines something instant, like an instant upload on your phone and playing around with tag clouds and stuff, and with something really slow that takes half a day, or you could spend a day like going out in a group to go and listen to and record birds. And I usually invite an expert, and we go somewhere where there's going to be some kind of like bird spectacular or something in the birding calendar. So on the top right, we've got Lisa Thomas, who's an environmental scientist, talking about the history and the ecology of the Somerset Levels. And on the bottom right, we've got Tony Whitehead, who's an expert in the animal voice. So Twitcher brings people together online with a shared passion for bird recording, and also offline in these kind of local groups to kind of come together and go out and record and listen together. And so the final piece I'm going to show you is called vocal migrations. And again, this is really inspired by the behavior of animals. This is inspired by bats. And how bats echolocate, how they can send out ultrasound and listen to the reflections of the sound and build a mental image of the space around them so they can fly around in the dark without colliding with each other or objects. So I thought, this is absolutely amazing. I'd really like to try and find a way of experiencing this somehow. So I worked again with programmer Matthew Olden and another programmer called Tarim, and we built this device that you can wear. It's a little box, and it's got a proximity sensor. And then when you wear it, you also have a little microphone, so you can sample your own voice. I thought it was important to use the human voice as a kind of vocal call. And the proximity sensor then, the box kind of records the voice, and the proximity sensor then modulates the voice based on how close you are to an object. So the idea is that you can effectively move around, changing how your voice is modulated using this technology. And so I set up this installation by constructing a paper maze, a labyrinth, and blindfold people and kit them out on this device and invite them to use their own voice to navigate, and to navigate by listening rather than looking. So here's a short video of that happening. So the idea is that I give people this device that mimics how bats echolocate and an instruction of how to use their voice. And there is some ambient sound that I make in the space that's from my own voice, and the idea is that music or soundscape emerge from this behavior. So it's a completely open score. And it also, this is a quote from one of the participants. So there's a point where they sort of let go and decided they could navigate by listening and not worry about this, not being able to see. And it became really immersive. And I thought, well, this really reminds me of the free group improvisation sessions I was talking about at the start of this talk. And so really the people involved in that have kind of given over, and they're improvising within this open score as they experience the piece. So all the pieces I've shown you use this idea of an open score, and they also use some kind of element of improvisation. And they're all involved in some kind of process rather than a fixed, finished outcome. So I was thinking about why open scores are important to me as a creative practitioner, and they're important because when I use an open score, it helps me to improvise. If I work with something like that, it can help me to think in new ways and come up with new ideas. And to finish with a quote from Cornelius Cardew, talking about a Lamont Young score, saying that it can take you outside yourself, stretch you to an extent that could not occur spontaneously. So as a thought for the future, I think an important thing is that we learn how to effectively improvise as a group together. And just to recap on Dave Smith's inspiring guidelines for group improvisation, listen and act accordingly, don't waste sounds, and develop social responsibility. Thanks very much.